Dear participants, hi. Welcome to the 39th Science and Society meeting, which is organized by İstanbul Ticaret University. This is Professor Dr. Tuğba Karabulut, and I am very happy to host distinguished Professor Paula Caligiuri'yi in our webinar. She is in the field of international business and strategy, and she's from Northeastern University. And she'll be talking about the science and practice of building cultural agility. Welcome, dear Professor Caligiuri'yi.
Thank you, Professor. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and our Vice Rector will make the opening speech. Welcome, dear Professor Çaha. Yes, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dear college, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished Professor Dr. Paula Caligiuri'yi. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 39th Science and Society meetings organized by İstanbul Ticaret University. It is very pleasing for all of us that the Science and Society meetings, which started 3 years ago, have reached its 39th program. On behalf of our university, I would like to express my feelings of more than thanks and appreciation to Professor Dr. Caligiuri'yi, who kindly accepted our invitation and honoring us by participating in this important event. Dr. Paula Caligiuri'yi is from Northeastern University. She is one of the most prolific writers in international business for her works in expatriate management, global leadership development, and cultural agility. I would like also to express my feelings of thanks and appreciation to Professor Tuğba Karabulut from İstanbul Ticaret University, who has organized these important events. Science and Society meetings aim to inform the public on crucial academic and social issues from the scientific point of view. The programs that have been realized so far are found in a playlist on the YouTube account of our university. Anyone who is interested in these events can download and watch them. Professor Caligiuri'yi will tell us today about science and practice of building cultural agility. Cultural agility refers to an individual's ability to understand, appreciate, and effectively navigate cultural differences and adapt to various cultural contexts. It involves being aware of one's own cultural biases and assumptions, as well as being able to understand and respect different cultural norms and values. A culturally agile person can communicate and work effectively with people from diverse backgrounds and can adjust their behavior and communication style to accommodate different cultural expectations. Cultural agility is becoming increasingly important in our globalized world, where people from different cultures interact and collaborate more frequently. Cultural agility is crucial for success in international business, as it helps individuals and organizations navigate cultural differences, build strong relationships, and capitalize on new business opportunities. Professor Caligiuri'yi will focus on these important issues in detail. As I have another program organized previously, I would not be able to follow the whole program, but I fully believe that this program will fill an important gap in its field, and you will have intellectually fruitful and inspiring presentation. As I end my speech, I wish this program to be successful once again, and I send my deep respect to Professor Dr. Paula Caligiuri'yi and all participants in this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Professor Çaha. Yeah, the stage is yours, dear Professor Caligiuri'yi.
Thank you, Professor Chalahobo. Thank you, Professor Chahat. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. And this is a pretty relaxed opportunity, but I will go through some prepared remarks. Sorry, now my computer decided to not allow me to go forward. Oh, there we go. So what I hope to do today is share some about the science of how we build cultural agility, and then move to the practice of how we build cultural agility. And my hope that in the science, you'll find something that's interesting, and then in the practice, you'll find something that's useful. So if I've done my job after 30, 40 minutes, we'll each have one thing that's interesting and one thing that's useful, but you can be the judge of that. We'll hopefully have time for questions and answers at the end, of course. First of all, I think it's fair to say, what is culture, right? I mean, so often we think culture is country, but that's not true, right? We're born into a country, and there's certainly opportunities in that country to shape our values, shape our beliefs. It shapes our norms. It shapes how we behave. But that often comes through in the family in which we were raised, our education, our generation, profession, the organizations that we are part of, our religion, and many others, the sports we play. So if you think about culture, what I'd like you to sort of really hold on to is the idea that culture isn't country. Culture is all of the socializing agents that have shaped how you see the world, how you see, when you look at a situation, you see right, wrong, good, bad, fair, unfair, pretty, ugly. Anything that's subjective is filtered through your layers of socialization. So I never want to stereotype, and so we're not going to just reduce us to just country equals, but really we're all quite unique in our cultural values. They just tend to track a little more because we share socializing agents. So that's country, or that's culture. Cultural agility then is the ability to, as Professor Chahas had mentioned, is the ability to comfortably and effectively work in different countries and with people from different cultures, or those who have different cultural values. It is one of the most critical competencies we need for the future. Even in a situation, even in a world where we're working from our homes, right? And we're not traveling as much, it has still become critical, even in the digital economy, given the interconnectivity of our world, the intergenerational organizations that we're in, the multidisciplinary work that we do, the multifunctional teams that we're on. It's becoming ever more increasingly important. So we need this. I know in the United States, AACSB is the body which gives accreditation to business schools. And I'm just sharing this slide from an American perspective, because I'm sure ICWIS or whatever your governing bodies have something quite similar. And that is that one of the fundamental principles of business school and businesses to prepare business students for the future is that they're able to build an understanding of different cultures and values, being accepting of cultural differences and understanding them so that they can have future intercultural and global careers. So it's important. It's important for business students, but it's important for professionals, really of any area, not just those in business. But it's not common. It's not common. Even though we're so intercultural, so we're so interconnected, what we see is that it's not a competency that we're naturally effective in. So this was a study done of 13,000 professionals around the world. the only 3 competencies, they were asked to self-rate their competencies. There were only 3 competencies with an intercultural, multicultural dimension. And they were the 3 that individuals rated themselves as doing least well. In other words, of all the things we say we know how to do, we know that we're not necessarily effective in situations requiring cultural agility. Students had the same reaction. So this was a study done on students who were graduating from their universities. And these were the 8 critical competencies upon graduation. The one that they said they did least well was the global and intercultural fluency, their cultural agility. And this is at a time when our campuses, when students have more opportunities to interact in a multicultural environment than ever before. So it was pretty profound, right? That even students are saying, hey, we're not naturally good at this. Their employers agreed. Their employers agreed. So these were the same competencies were asked of hiring managers to reflect on their new entries into the workforce, their new university graduates who just started working with them, and rating their competencies. And they named their intercultural fluency, their cultural agility as near last. My friends, that's problematic. That's really problematic. A competency that's so critical, yet one that we don't have naturally, and we're not necessarily gaining it through universities. So why? Why is this still a problem? I mean, for goodness sake, Rene Descartes in the 1600s was talking about the need for cultural agility. We've been knowing this for 400 years. Why are we so naturally, just not necessarily great at this? And the challenge is that really it's a function of our biology. We still have these primitive brains, right? That seek familiarity and feel like our brains feel cognitive ease, greatest comfort in situations that are familiar. And psychology, and that is the desire to be in situations that are predictable. So it's really this function of biology and psychology, and that's the science part that I'll talk about. Yet we tend to overlook it. We think, that doesn't matter, when in fact, it really does. So first, let's talk a little bit about biology. And I think many of us have seen some of these before, but I'll just run through it very quickly. So the first question, I guess I know we have some PhD students on here. How quickly does it take to make a first impression? How quickly does it take to make a first impression? My friends, it only takes 1/10 of a second. It's pre-conscious thought. Our brains have stored so much data from the day we were born, and some are saying even before, right? And we respond to the world in a way that we don't even realize we're responding. We're interpreting the world through a lens that we've been given, through a lens that's been socialized through the layers of family education, profession, generation, and the like. We can't turn it off. We cannot turn it off. We have to respect that that's part of who we are, but we can build the competencies to override that natural tendency and that natural reaction. So now I've got a little exercise for us. Okay, hopefully this video will work, and if it does, I want to show it to you. It's very short, and you've probably seen it, but I want you to kind of go through it exactly as it's intended and do the exercises it's intended. It's very, very short. Again, you've probably seen it, but I want you to kind of go with it. So you're going to be asked to look at how many times a team wearing white passes the ball. I want to show you something else around psychology. So you're going to identify the number of times the team wearing white passes a ball. Okay, and if this works.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
So you can unmute yourself if you want to take a guess. Or not, or put it in the chat.
8, 9 maybe.
8, 9.
8, 9 as well.
8 or 9. Okay. How's our PhD student? How are they doing? Maybe they're not on.
Actually, we're doing good. We're doing good so far, and I can. This is different experience, and I'm looking forward to learn more about it.
Okay. So actually, the number was 13. But I'm going to play it one more time. This time I want you to watch it, and I haven't changed anything. I'm just going to play it one more time. This time I want you to see if you're seeing the bear walking through. There's a bear.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Did you see the bear?
Yeah, we saw the bear, yeah.
Saw the bear, of course. It was the exact same video. Some of you have seen it before. Some of you have never seen it. And of course, we're focused on the number of times the team's passing the ball that we miss something that's just so glaringly obvious, so present, and that is a bear walking through the through the frame. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about why we talk about cultural awareness, why we need to, because the psychology of who we are and what we are and how we've been socialized puts us in situations and we see what we're expecting to see, or we focus on what we're expecting will happen, or we're focused on the task at hand, when in fact, when you're in different cultures, something completely different could be relevant. Now, my friends, I promise you that just because we did this experiment, you're not going to go to a sporting event and see bears all over the place. It's just not how this works. But you will, should something be more different, you will be able to notice it. That's why we build awareness for cultural differences, not to reinforce stereotypes, but to identify something when it might be present, to basically send to your limbic system, to send to your processor that something else could be worthy of interpretation. So how does this work? Well, how this works in practice, and I'll give you just a couple quick examples, is that we process the cues that are being given to us all the time, even right now, right? So here's a little example. If you have these two doctors as an option, and this is just a thought experiment, you don't need to say it out loud, but which doctor would you rather go to? The one who's smiling or the one who's serious? And I promise you, I've done shown this all over the world, and there is a real difference. In some cultures, a smile means warmth, attention, caring, concern. In others, it means superficiality, not taking something seriously. In some cultures, serious look means credible, important, focused. And in others, it means indifferent, cold, right? So we think about, I was raised, my socialization as a little girl was to smile. I'm American, but my parents were from Italy. I don't know why. Our family was a pretty happy, smiley family. They always asked, why aren't you smiling? So my default was to smile. And I know when I'm in certain cultures, I have to be a little careful because I would come off as less credible. That's just one small example. And that just is something as basic as a smile. Let's talk about another one really quickly. This is silence. Silence.
Maybe after 10 seconds.
Right. So for some people, people, it's 10 seconds. For some people, it's 4. For some cultures, it's 0. Actually, you talk over each other to create the connection. And interestingly, when a culture that appreciates silence interacts with a culture that is a little more concerned with, it can make the silence seem like you're disengaged, disinterested, whereas silence in some cultures means thoughtful, pensive. In other cultures, speaking over each other, connect really closely, means that you're engaged, and in other cultures, it's rude. So the same exact behavior needs to then take on kind of multiple meanings, whereas those without cultural agility will just naturally, 1/10 of 1 second, naturally ascribe meaning to that difference. So it's interesting, the more we gain cultural agility, the more we can flex around what meanings these meanings hold. And that's really important. The other thing that we need to consider, remember there's psychology and biology kind of in interplay here. The other part of this is that the psychology of cultural agility is that we're in situations of novelty. So if I'm with a group of a different generation, or if I come over to if I'm physically in Turkey and I'm in a situation that's new, I might be having a wonderful time. But my body, even though I might be feeling happy and feeling, welcomed, my body is still signaling novelty, novelty, novelty, novelty. Our primitive brains haven't yet caught up to our cognitive brains, if you will. So our primitive brains are still saying novelty means risk, risk means danger. So even though our cognitive brains like where we are enjoying where we are, our stress indicators are still high. There's been interesting research done looking at, for instance, blood sample tests of people for their stress indicators over time, where some people are in a different country and some people stay in a domestic situation. And the cortisol levels, the indicators of stress are much higher, even when people are enjoying themselves. So what happens when humans are in situations, their bodies, not them, their bodies signal stress? We cling to familiar. We cling to familiar. Think about when COVID first started. Around the world, people were clinging to familiar. They were cooking, baking, there's comfort food. There were things that they were doing to feel and make themselves feel more comfortable. What it does is it narrows your field of vision so that it becomes even harder to see that moonwalking bear, to see that bear walking across, to see something that's different, even though, so it basically, it's working against us, if you will. That's part of the reason why cultural agility is so challenging to build. And then there's one more layer of psychology interacting with biology. And that is how we are genetically wired. So for instance, we're genetically wired with our neurotransmitters to handle dopamine and serotonin. Depending on how we're wired for, say, for instance, dopamine, it might be any amount of novelty might be too much, too much, too much, too much. Whereas other people, they can have a lot of novelty and they don't get very anxious. It's really, the studies on this are really fascinating. For those of you who are athletes and love to ski or do anything that's kind of extreme, like an extreme sport, jump out of an airplane or if you enjoy those types of things, it means that your body can handle a lot of novelty without getting anxious. Whereas some people don't like to try anything new or get really nervous when they're lost. Your body probably has a lower set point. So we have all of these things kind of mixing together, our brains, our neurotransmitters, our responses. and that creates kind of our comfort and our natural response when we're in situations of novelty. That's the science part. We're not good at this, my friends, because it's very unnatural for many of us. It's not it's not racism, it's not sexism for most people. It's not ageism, it's not anyism. It's just that we're not natural. But there's lots of things we can do to make it better. There's lots of things we can do, many opportunities to build the competencies so that you can be comfortable anywhere and with any group and in any situation. So that's what we're really working toward. I do a lot of work in international business, international human resources, and this is sort of the snapshot of we're moving into the practice side of this. For years, for many years, both the science and the practice believed that if you take someone from one country and move them to another country, they would build cultural agility just because they're in the other country. That's that big green gear at the bottom. If you give someone an experience, they'll build cultural agility. What we found in research and in practice is that's not true. I'm sure you all know people who have lived in another country and returned back to Turkey and really aren't any different from the perspective of cultural agility. And I'm also certain you've met people who have been to another country and returned and have had like an incredible eye-opening experience that dramatically enabled them to work anywhere. The difference is in the biology of who they are and the experiences that they had along the way and what they were prepared for. So experience alone isn't it, but it's important. So then the science and practice kind of moved to training, that purple gear. And that was the awareness. That was the, pre-departure training, those orientations that companies give before you have a meeting or an opportunity in another place, or the trainings that were given, the diversity trainings that were given. It's basically saying, hey, there could be a bear walking through the basketball game. I need you to know that. And awareness training was important, but not enough. And then research more recently understood, as did practice, that there's something called these competencies, these cultural agility competencies. And those cultural agility competencies are a combination of how your body handles serotonin and dopamine, but also a combination of the skills that you've built along the way. Those competencies are things like resilience and humility and perspective taking and curiosity. Those three gears together, the cultural experience, the cultural awareness, and the cultural competencies, when we put programs together in organizations and in universities, all of a sudden students, professionals, executives, cultural agility starts to build. Experience alone doesn't do it, training alone doesn't do it, and competencies alone won't do it. All three are critical. So I just want to show you a few kind of where this all lands. Goal number one, we need to build that awareness, that purple gear, the training piece. We need to help each other understand that there's differences in cultural dimensions. For those of you who have studied a little bit of international business, these will look familiar. Hofstede, the Globe Study, Schwartz. These are just differences in the way cultures see the world. And those are, again, not necessarily always a function of country, but rather the socializing agents that have made you. So whether it's being more hierarchical or more egalitarian, being more formal, being more informal, being more collectivist or individualist. These are all of, those dimensions. And I'm not going to spend much time on these because at the very end, I'm going to give you a tool that you can actually play around with these and get definitions and assess yourself and look at different countries and the like. So, but awareness building. So as a goal, we should be helping each other, again, whether in university or in organizations, build an awareness of cultural differences. And these are the 8 dimensions that have been most critical. Then we also need to build cultural agility competencies. With that, the competencies include curiosity, just trying to understand how things are different, tolerance of ambiguity, the ability to stay longer in situations that are unpredictable, resilience, the ability to say, you know what, in any new situation, you're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. More of that growth mindset. Humility, to say, look I know how to be a faculty member or a journalist or a physician or an accountant, but I don't know how to do that here in this new context. That's really key. That's that side of humility. Relationship building, the ability to connect and learn through, that's how we're socialized, and learn through those who are in the new environment. And perspective taking, the ability to say that, I understand that we're going to see things very different. Okay, so goal number 2, we're building these cultural competencies. And goal number 3 is really having some experiences. It starts with understanding what's novel for you. What's novel for one person might not be novel for another. Someone else might need more of a cultural stretch. And that when you're in that new environment, to learn from it. So for instance, so many people talk about experience as being so important, but in fact, there's lots of people who travel to different countries and don't build cultural agility because it's not just breathing the air of another country, it's having the interactions and having a true experience while you're there that enables you to question your assumptions and really test your way of doing things. So 3 goals, 3 really important ways that we can both focus on science, focus on practice. We can be doing this in our universities. We can also be doing this in companies. I'm just going to share a few case examples very, very quickly. These are all published studies. You can go and read them, send me a note and I'll send them to you. But just I want to kind of conclude with some examples. This one was done looking at individuals who are volunteering either in another country or volunteering in their home countries. And what we're finding was that people who were low in cultural agility to start, just doing some volunteer work in their home country was enough to build their cultural agility. In other words, just having a situation that was different from the one they were used to began to build their cultural agility. Whereas people who were at higher levels of cultural agility, that wasn't enough of a stretch. They needed to actually go into a different country and experience cultural agility. So that was something that's look at, understand your baseline, and then go a little further than wherever you're starting, go into a little more novelty than what you're comfortable with. If you're already high, go even more, and then you'll continue to build cultural agility. This study was looking at situations when people were lower in their baseline of cultural agility. And what we found that sometimes going with a friend or going with a colleague into a situation of novelty enables both of you to experience more in that situation. In other words, there was a safety opportunity. There was somebody who felt safe and predictable, which enabled you to do so much more in that cultural context. And we tested this out with students. We've since tested it out with senior executives. We called it the study buddy effect, just that you have somebody with whom you can interact, and then both of you can expand your world. So that's another kind of an interesting piece. The other study that we did was this idea of creating social support and social learning. In other words, having the ability to ask those who are from the culture and understand the culture, how can I be effective in this culture? So in other words, that idea of helping people learn how to learn in the situation that they're in, that's new and novel. So if you think about all of these, coming together, that we're really trying to help people get almost, if you will, trick their brain into finding situations of novelty as being less novel, so that growth can happen. And this last one is again a situation where it was an example where cultural agility can build even in situations that don't necessarily mean being in another place. Just being with someone who's from a different culture and having open conversations with one another about how the world is seen differently was enough to build cultural agility. Those are some pretty powerful kind of experiences when you think about the old mentality, go from one country to another and build. Now we're saying, no, understand who you are. Put yourself in a situation that's right for you. If you're still a little bit, if your brain is still triggering that this is novel, bring someone with you and learn to have open conversations in a very safe environment. And again, we build from experience. Science and practice, my friends. Cultural experiences matter. Cultural awareness is important. Cultural competencies are critical. All three of these will help build cultural agility. You can have these at the university through coursework, interactions, campus, work-life projects, Zoom meetings that we're in like these, any situations that give you a multicultural experience. I want to share with you a tool you can use in just the last few minutes before we go to questions. This tool is called My Guide, and it's spelled in a funny way. It's MYG and then two I's, IIDE. And the idea is we're helping people see eye to eye. So IIDE, but you can go on to it anytime. It's free. You can use it to help build awareness of how countries and cultures might differ, but you can also use it to build competencies, to build your own competencies, such as tolerance for ambiguity, resilience, and the like. This is the tool. If you're teaching and you want to use this in your classroom, we have tens of thousands of students using this all around the world in classrooms. A lot of them are undergraduate students. There's an opportunity to check the box for I am an undergraduate student if you're teaching and you want to do this with students. You can also, as a graduate student, you can say I'm a graduate student. If you're a PhD student or professional, either select graduate student, or you could just say I'm just curious, I'm interested, and it'll take you to the professional version of this. So you just sign up, remember your password. You can come in and take a profile if you'd like. You don't need to, though. That's not required at all. But there are two assessments that are interesting, and again, free. I should have mentioned that this was all part of a public benefit corporation that I set up with an investor who was very much a philanthropist who said, look, we need to make this available around the world. So he basically funded this. So that's why it's easy to say I can give it away for free. But you can take that cultural agility assessment to assess your competencies. You can take a values assessment to compare yourself to others. Then your dashboard will have both the values awareness tool and your competency tool, your results, so that it's kind of fun to see and fun to work with. I just wanted to share a little bit more about this. When you look at your values, the first exercise you should do is compare yourself to your home country. So if you're Turkish, compare yourself to Turkey. And you'll see, wait a minute, I'm not just like my home country. I'm not the prototype of Turkey. Where did it come from? Well, it could be, my family lived in the city, or, I went to the United States for college, or I lived abroad as a child, or whatever. You can start to explain your values relative to your home country. So it's also, for those of you who teach, it's a really fun exercise with students because it's not talking about stereotypes, it's talking about socializing agents. And it's actually quite effective. And then you can talk about then you can select any one of 190 something countries, and you can start to compare yourself to the prototype of different countries, basically, building an awareness. The tool also has quite a bit of information on what to do. So if you are going to be in a meeting, or if you're going to go to another country for a business trip or a conference, or for a student opportunity or a work opportunity, you can learn some of the practices to help prepare on the awareness side of that. So lots of great information there. It's all available for free. Similarly, with your competencies, please don't be worried if your competencies seem low. The STEM scores, the scores on which your competencies are compared, is those with significant international experience, not the population as a whole. And remember that because so much of our competencies depend on how our bodies handle serotonin and dopamine, much of the way that the competencies will pattern will be how our kind of natural strengths are. Always lead with your strengths. Some people go into new situations and they're just so curious. Other people go into new situations and they're really good at building relationships. Other people go into new situations and they're just really relaxed. They have a high tolerance of ambiguity. So everybody has a natural strength. Be sure you understand your natural strength, use it, and then you can work to build developmental opportunities of your competencies. And there too, the tool will give you lots of advice. If you still want more, there's a LinkedIn learning course on 6 ways to build cultural agility it will pattern after those 6 competencies. So that's a nice resource. And then the very last one I'll offer is there's a LinkedIn learning group for those of you who teach in international business or just business generally. It's a resource for those of us who teach in this area to share resources and ideas and classroom tips and the like to help our students build cultural agility. So hopefully, I've given you something interesting in the science. Hopefully, I've given you something practical you can use. And if you have one thing that was interesting and one thing that was useful, my friends, I've done my job. It was a pleasure to do this. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm also happy to stay connected. I use LinkedIn quite a bit. I'm happy to stay connected on LinkedIn. So with that, I will turn off my screen. I will stop talking and be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice presentation and they were very nice tools and we will definitely look at them. And yeah, Yajuba, would you like to ask a question? He's our PhD student and also the others are also our PhD students.
Great.
Okay, I hope you can hear me.
I can, yes.
Oh, wonderful. So I can see the enthusiasm you are giving this course, and it's a very interesting subject I like, and with all the information and even the visual tests in it. So it's an honor for me to be here with you. Okay, so, and actually I'm working on a subject about mindfulness at work. And according to this cultural agility, I see some link between them. And for that, my question will be, how do you promote cultural agility in the workplace?
Yeah, thank you so much for your work in mindfulness. One of the most powerful interventions or training activities that I do with executives, with my MBA students, with my undergraduate students, is I have them doing mindfulness meditation. And it's actually kind of interesting because they're like, why are we doing mindfulness meditation in a class on culture? Because, as you know very well, you need to be fully present and almost separated from your observations in order to slow down your processing, slow down your reactions so that you can experience the context as it is, as opposed to as you believe it is. And so mindfulness in the world, if I, when trying to put it out there, cultural agility out there, we also talk about some of these interventions, and one of them is important as mindfulness. So I hope that was the answer to the question, but that's the connection between those two.
Yes, the connection. I would like to know how you promote the cultural agility in the workplace.
Oh, how do I promote? Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if I may, I have to answer it a bit more with my professional hat on as opposed to my academic hat. We have a budget for marketing. So I do my best to make things available for free. We do our best to do talks like these, right? To try to get faculty members or soon to be faculty members teaching it to their students. So presumably their students, when they go out into their professional careers, will have this. We also work with organizations around the world, wherever they are interested and whenever they're interested, we have them using these tools as well. So the best I can do is try to get more people engaged in what truly makes people effective at this, and then hope for the best. It's the best I can do.
Quite impressive. Thank you for your answer, Professor.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mehmet, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you, Professor Fulda. Thank you, Professor Paula. It was really exciting and useful presentation and information for me because something is very important in our daily life and the business life, So I'm wondering, what is the importance of considering intercultural agility in the professional world? What you can say for this part of the agility?
Yeah. So again, I think if I'm understanding the question is, how does this work just in the professional world? Is that?
Yes.
You know, it's really fascinating when we work with companies, with organizations, we'll often begin with a survey of where their cultural challenges are. And you would expect the cultural challenges to be national differences. Often that's not the case. Oftentimes, the biggest cultural challenges are professional differences. So the engineers talking to the marketing people, the quality people can't understand what the production people, like they're seeing their part of the company in a very different way. So sometimes it's just getting those groups to work more comfortably together and helping them build the agility, you know, around, you know, how different people are seeing the situation. The other one that's quite common is generational differences. And this, I think, is true around the world. You know, there's socializing agents that are common depending on what generation you're in. And that sometimes it's easier to relate to someone from another country who's of the same generation or same life experience. So what we try to do in organizations, especially with a lot of, I don't know how it is in Turkey, but in the United States, there's such a big emphasis on diversity and inclusion, which I love, I really appreciate, but we try to take it away from, you know, just the kind of the race, sex, religion, and try to say individual with socializing agents, individual with socializing agents, and that we can respect and understand that we're different, you know, and our natural responses will be different. So on the company side, we do it, you know, we have to kind of navigate what's relevant for them.
Yeah, that's true. I was working for eBay in my previous job. So in the beginning, I had some difficulty for this agility with the other my colleagues. So, but in a time when we understand as a personally in our habits, culture, and the other details, and after that, it was more quality professional relationship with each others. So that's very important. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. If I when companies say, look, we only have time for one of these three, which one should we select? Easy, I say competencies, because if I have someone who has tolerance of ambiguity, resilience, perspective taking, humility, curiosity, if they have those, you can put them in any situation and they'll figure it out. As opposed to,
yes.
you know, training, or development.
Yes.
I'd say competencies. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mehmet. Fuad, would you like to ask a question? Fuad, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, sir. This is Fuad. It's Ceylan. I am a PhD student, and I would like to know actually the goals of agility and also the difference between an organization where there are a lot of technological usage and on the other side, the organizations where there are very less usage of technological and digitalization. So,
yeah, but that's a really cool question. That's an important question. So the goals ultimately are to build trust, gain credibility, communicate, and collaborate more effectively. So if you think about, you know, the second part of your question, what are the roles in an organization that require trust, communication, credibility, and collaboration? In some high-tech firms where people are interacting essentially alone, and then moving content from their place to another or in a repository of knowledge, there probably isn't a high need for cultural agility. But in situations where there are human interaction, trust, credibility, communication, collaboration needed, chances are very, very important or very high that cultural agility will be important. And I say that because a lot of companies right now believe, oh, well, we're doing everything remotely. We're doing everything on Zoom. We're doing everything. We're not meeting each other anymore. So cultural agility doesn't matter. And what we're finding is the exact opposite, that cultural agility is even more important in situations like these, when the only information we have about each other is in this little tiny square with few minutes to connect, right? So it's becoming more and more important. So if you're not interacting with humans at all, probably not the most critical competency. If there's any human interaction, it becomes more important. If there's human interaction that's technology enabled, I would highly recommend cultural agility, because you just don't have the time to build that trust and to build that connection. So that would be my answer to that really important question.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Yeah, Famil, he is also our PhD student. Would you like to ask a question? You have to turn on your voice. Huh?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to ask a question to Professor Paula Caligiuri'yi. Why is the agility important for success? Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, so important for success. I think in the past few years, given everything that happened with COVID that made us so isolated in many ways, and in so much of what's happening now with artificial intelligence taking a lot of humans out of the equation, it's sometimes easy to forget how critical the concept of trust is. So fundamental to how we become effective in the world is the trust relationships that we build, both our close ties, but also our weaker ties. For those of you who study that literature, the ability to connect and really be trusted and be credible. So why is it important in the world? I think it's important in the world on a business perspective, because so much of what we do requires trust, and that's not going to go away. For the world, frankly, I think if we had more cultural agility, I think our world would be in a little bit more of a comfortable place. I think we would be a little less quick to judge and to be hard with one another. So I don't know. I think I'm optimistic in that I hope that with more cultural agility, we can build more connection and not be so quick to judge one another, but rather respect and just be a part of this world that we're in and realize that we've all kind of lived different realities that change how we see it. So I don't know. I'm gonna hang on to optimism.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I have a question. First of all, it was a very nice presentation and your answers were very nice. We appreciate to meet with you. What will be your suggestions for researchers who work in the field of culture, international business? What might be the new research areas that they can explore?
Wow. Oh, goodness. We need another few hours. There are so many. I go back to the kind of those three big boxes. I think there's great research that can be done just in the world of experiences. Like, what experiences virtually can build cultural agility? What experiences person to person can build cultural agility? What experiences in a team can build cultural agility? So in that world of experiences, what can we be doing that changes cultural agility? I think on the awareness side, on the training side, I think virtual reality will be very interesting. I think artificial, what situation can we place ourselves in a virtual environment that helps us build an awareness of what could be different, basically retraining our brain, if you will, to see things from multiple lenses. I think that's going to be a wide open area. And then on the side of the competencies, remember, every one of those competencies has a recipe, right? So any one of those competencies can be an avenue of research. Just understanding humility and what kind of personality traits, hardwiring is related to humility, and then what kind of skills and abilities and experiences can build humility. That too could be a paper. So could resilience. So could tolerance of ambiguity. So each one of those could be an important area. How they interconnect, I think, is a new area. And then putting it all together, they're still relatively new.
And thank you very much. And what will be your suggestions for the leaders and academic leaders? How can they improve their cultural agility, and how can they improve the cultural agility of their teams?
Yeah, I would say prioritize it. We're seeing universities all around the world starting to say, we take this seriously, minimally, giving students the tools like the one I shared, but lots of different ways, saying, you know what, we're not just putting people in a room together and believing they're going to be okay, or putting people on a team together and believing they'll figure it out, or putting people in another country and thinking they're going to gain it, but rather giving them the tools, the competencies, the even if it's self-directed and self-development, giving them the focus as they're having those experiences so that they can build from them. So that would be my hope for both universities and organizations. And in fact, that's what we're starting to see, which is nice.
And also, I would like to ask about from the perspective of expatriates. The global companies expand in different regions, and before they send their employees to different countries, we think that there might be some tools or ways to improve their cultural agility, so they will be more flexible when they go over there. They can represent themselves much better. They can make more contribution to their organizations.
That's an important question, because you think about all of those three dimensions matter, right? So the experience is the international assignment. And then there's the other two, the training on the awareness of what could be different, and then the competencies that they have. This is a big choice for companies with expatriates. They know they're sending someone on that international experience. So the question is, on the competency side, do you select people who have the competencies, or do you build people to have the competencies? Either way, you want to be sure they have some of those competencies before the international experience. Too often companies will say, oh yeah, we want that person. They have the technical skills, forget about the competencies, go. And then bad things happen. They're not effective. Similarly with training. So with training, we're a little more advanced with the training, and we know that some amount of training before someone goes into another country is important. But equally important is learning how to learn in the country. So in other words, with the training side, we want to do something like the online tool or something before, and then giving them a coach or a colleague, someone to connect and help them learn about the country while they're in the country. That seems to be the best situation. So when I'm working with companies who have an expatriate population, we usually do an assessment first and figure out who's ready. If we don't have many who are ready from a competency, tolerance, ambiguity, resilience perspective, we don't have many, we start to build. We put in the training, and then we set up a coaching, like a peer-to-peer coaching program in country. And that combination usually is very effective.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And also you have studies in the field of talent management. So how can you combine talent management with cultural agility? What could be done in this field?
Right. So if you think about, talent management being those critical skills that companies need in order for to be effective, those critical skills that happen to be inherent in a person, those critical skills. This goes back, I think, to that earlier question. If you have critical skills that your organization needs, the people who are deemed talent, if those critical skills also require trust, collaboration, communication, credibility, if those critical skills, the talent, also have those needs, what we recommend is that you start to embed the development opportunities for cultural agility in with the talent management programs. Like, for example, I showed you the cases of the volunteerism. With some of our clients prior to COVID, what we would do is we would take people who are considered high potential, high performing leaders and put them in teams, and then have them work in other countries for nonprofit organizations using their skills. So they were basically getting a very short but very powerful developmental experience so that they could go back into their companies because they're talent, right? And use their cultural agility now in their organizations. And that's working. It's an example.
Thank you very much, dear Professor Caligiuri. It's our honor that we hosted you in our webinar today, and we would like to see you in our university, in our country, as soon as possible, whenever you want. Thank you very much for joining our webinar, and I also would like to thank all the participants who joined, and I also would like to thank, of course, İstanbul Ticaret University for giving me this chance. We would like to see you in Turkey, in our university, whenever you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah. And maybe we can also collaborate further.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Right. Articles, do research together. Thank you very much.